Hello guys, how are you? So in this video we're going to talk about past atmospheric changes, okay? The atmosphere and the climate of this planet have always changed. That's because abiotic factors and biotic factors, okay? So mainly abiotic factors such as temperature and precipitation and biotic factors such as plants and animals. Remember that the atmosphere that we have now was in billions of years ago was different. So before plants evolved to photosynthesize and produce oxygen, there was no free oxygen in the atmosphere of this planet. And there were changes about the temperature and the concentration of CO2 during those billions or millions of years, okay? So we're going to analyze this picture because in the class of Zoom we're going to answer these three questions that you have in here. So I just wanted to let you know what do you have, how do you have to understand this picture. So what do we have in here? This picture has different variables. For example, in the y-axis, it has atmospheric CO2, carbon dioxide concentration, in ppms, parts per million. In the x-axis, it has millions of years ago, okay? Then in this axis, we have average global temperature, as you can see. And then what do we have to understand from this picture? Then we have the different we have a geological time, the different geological eras like the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. Okay, and all of them they have like different divisions, like you can see Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, and all of them. Maybe you know the Jurassic era because we have seen like pictures of videos or movies about that, so you have an idea of how a different era is. Okay, so before that we need to understand which are the eras, and remember they have happened like billions of years ago or millions of years ago. As you can see, for example, the Pleistocene, it happened 1.8 millions of years ago. The Jurassic era, 199.6 millions of years ago, and then the other ones. Okay, so I wanted to think that in every different era we have different animals, different environmental conditions, different concentrations of CO2, depending of what. We have in the first one like microorganisms that were like they were living in the sea, like you can see fishes, crustaceans, and all of them. Okay. Then what happened in the Mesozoic, the creation of plants. We have the first plants, photosynthetic organisms, and that is how the oxygen concentration increased in those eras. Okay, so that is the idea to know about the geological eras. And then what do we need to understand? Sorry about that. How this blue line is the average global temperature, remember that, global temperature during those years, remember millions of years. And this curve, the red one, is the atmospheric CO2 concentration. So we need to understand if there is a relationship between those two or not. Remember, something is happening here. We have an average global temperature of around 22 Celsius. So it was a little hot, not hot, but it was like that. Then we had that something happened, a really big decrement of the temperature, and then this kind of conditions, okay, as you can see in the different eras. But what happened with the red one, that is the atmospheric CO2 concentration? As you can see, the CO2 concentration in the Cambrian era was very high, and then it started to decrease, right? As you can see here, then we have a slightly variations, as you can see, up to get now that 0 million years ago, that could be the present, with an average temperature of around 12, 15, and then depending on the part of the planet that you are living, right, and living in, and then we have the CO2 concentration of around 200 or 300 parts per million. That those are the normal concentrations now, or 400 parts per million, okay, in the atmosphere that we have now. So is there a relationship between the CO2 and the average of temperature? Because it says that greenhouse gases, like this one, have caused the increment of global temperatures. So I want you to analyze this in group, see that if you find a relationship there or maybe something there, and then we're going to answer these three questions. What is the relationship between carbon dioxide and the temperature in the graph? Is there a relationship? No, I don't know. What other factors besides atmospheric carbon may influence air temperatures? Do you know? Maybe the movement of the continents, volcanic eruptions. Think about that. Can we rely on the data collection methods used? Can you rely? Remember that this data comes from, I don't know, it's a data that is supposed to be millions of years ago. So how did the scientists do to collect this kind of data? Is that reliable or not? And talking about atmospheric CO2 and temperature, okay? So that is the second activity that you are going to do, because the first one is this one. Draw a systems diagram of the atmosphere. I'm going to give you the inputs and outputs. That way it's going to be easier, okay? This is going to be an individual activity during the Zoom class, and this is going to be a group activity during the Zoom class too, okay? Bye guys.